Dear students, it is me, Father Roy. We are going to enter into another lesson called The Portrait of the Lady, written by Kushwanth Singh. Let us begin the lesson by knowing about the author of the lesson. You must have heard of the author. The name of the author is Kushwanth Singh. In this particular lesson, he narrates about his grandmother. Now you come to page number 82, about the author. Something is narrated there about the author. Kushwanth Singh is an Indian writer in English. He was born on 2nd February 1914. Okay, he is an Indian writer in English. There are many Indian writers, famous novelists like R.K. Narayan. He is an Indian writer in English. Who wrote Swaminathan and Friends. We have learned one lesson in 8th standard now before the match. So like that, our Kushwanth Singh also a well-known Indian writer in English literature. He is a prominent Indian novelist and journalist. Singh's weekly column with malice towards one and all, carried by several Indian newspapers, is among the most widely read columns in the country. So he was very much passionate about democracy, politics, society. So he used to write a number of articles and columns, and those were published in all the major dailies, weeklies, and newspapers. So he is a well-known writer in English from India. Singh is best known for his penchant for secularism. Penchant means interest. His special interest for secularism, his humor, and an abiding love of poetry. So he was a very good admirer of poetry, and he used to narrate everything in a humorous way. And he was very much passionate about the secularism. He is the recipient of Padma Bhushan in 1974 and Padma Vibhushan in 2007. So this indicates how precious was his contribution to Indian literature. He was one of the editors of the famed Illustrated Weekly of India. So he was the editor of that particular weekly. His works include a history of Sikhs, Train to Pakistan, Delhi, etc. So these were the famous works of Kushwanth Singh. If you get time, try to read some of his articles which could be seen in the internet. Okay, now we straight away enter into the lesson. Take page number 69. Dear students, now we straight away enter into the lesson. Take page number 69 from your textbook, Unit 4, Prose, The Portrait of a Lady, written by Kushwanth Singh. So here you see some warm-up activity. We will just make that also. Name of your maternal or paternal grandparents. So try to recollect the name of your grandparents. Maternal means related to your mother. Paternal means related to your father. Try to recollect their name. Mine is Chaco and Maria Kuti. So you can also remember like that. Varki and Mary Kuti. Okay, you can remember like that. Or any aged relative in your family. So in your family there may be grandma, grandpa, or great grandma, great grandpa, or great great grandma, great 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 grandpa. Remember them. Their age. What must be their age? Do they live with you? Or if not, where do they live? Are they happy? The way you help them, how do you help them? Do you pay visit to them? The way you celebrate their birthdays? their favorite foods and pastimes. So how do they eat and what are their favorite foods? Have you ever asked them? Plan how would you celebrate your grandparents' day. So if you have Mother's Day, you have Father's Day, and if there is a grandparents' day, how do you celebrate it? The day and the date and the people you would invite. So you can just recollect all those things when you get time. Collect photos if any, and prepare a speech. So you collect some of the photos or you make a PowerPoint presentation, and how do you prepare a speech in honor of them? Share your experience with them, discuss their importance in the family. So now by way of homework, you can just ask them for their experience and try to recollect their name and be thankful to God for their valuable presence and for their being. Okay, they are the reason why we are here, isn't it? So we should respect them. After the warm-up activity, we will straight away enter into the lesson. The first paragraph I will read and explain to you. If you have some doubt, you can just text me or send me a voice message so that I will answer to your questions in person. So whatever be the doubt, you can ask for a clarification. My grandmother. So the first paragraph, first line. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. So everybody's grandmother will be old. They cannot be young, isn't it? They cannot be younger than your parents, isn't it? Because they are grandparents. They gave birth to your parents, isn't it? So they are like they will be always old people. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. So here Kushwanth is saying that it is 20 years since I have known her, and she has the same age as well as the same wrinkled face. No change for 20 years. She remains same. Not as young, but as an old lady, she is same. People said that she had once been young and pretty. So, when you look at your grandma and grandpa, they may not look so nice, but when they were young like you, they must have been more beautiful or prettier or handsome than you. So, Kushwanth is saying that the people used to tell him that she was once very pretty, very nice, very beautiful lady, and even had a husband. So she had a husband. That means husband must be his grandfather. But that was hard to believe. Kushwanth is saying that is very hard to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece, so in your house there must be, if your grandfather is dead and gone, there will be some photos of your grandfather, isn't it? And it was hung. Kushwanth's grandfather's photo was hung above the mantelpiece. In the northern India, in some places it will be severe cold, so you will have a fireplace, and above the fireplace there will be a furniture made of wood or made of stone or cement, and that particular construction would be made in such a way that it will not get fire. Then over that many things will be decorated, many things will be placed over that, like it could be used as a furniture, very good furniture where you can keep photos, albums, all those things. Okay. So my grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. So in the drawing room it was there. It was hung there. He wore a big turban. So now Kushwanth is saying about he's a Sikh person, isn't it? He's a Sikh man from Punjab, must be. Okay. So in Punjab there are a lot of Sikh, not a Sikh, S-I-C-K, Sikh people with big turban. You must have seen Sikh people with a turban, no? And loose fitting clothes. So usually this Punjabi people will wear a pajama and all this kurta, very loose type. Okay. So his long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. So in comparison to this pretty grandma, he looks very old. He looks like 100 years old grandpa. Okay. And he had a long beard. The sick people will have long beard. They never trim their beard, it seems. Okay. So he had a long beard which covered even his chest. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. Here Kushwanth is saying that his grandfather doesn't look like a person who would have a wife or children. Okay, it's very difficult to believe that way. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. Okay, it's very difficult to imagine that he has wife or children, but we can imagine only about his grandchildren. Okay, by looking at the photo, you will think of his grandchildren only, not about his wife and children, because he is such old. As for my mother, being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. As for my grandmother, being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. So, my grandmother was younger comparing to my grandpa. Okay, that is what he is saying here. So, the thought was, he used to have this thought revolting in his mind. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. So, your grandma and all, no, they will tell you what were the plays they were playing, how they were going to school, how they were studying, whether they had online classes. At that time, there were no computer, no mobile phones, nothing was there. So, they had a tough time actually comparing to ours, isn't it? So they will tell all their stories. They will say stories after stories. So they are never tired of telling their stories. So this Kushwanth Singh's grandmother also had told many stories to Kushwanth Singh regarding her childhood experience, the plays, and how they were with their friends, all those things. Okay. When you become grandpa and grandma and all, you can tell your grandchildren like this. So you should have good stories. You should have good games. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. So it was very difficult to believe the way he told, because now it is that age gap is huge, isn't it? Some 60-70 years back story she is saying, and it was very difficult to believe that such and such things happened at that time. And they believed it as some fables, some moral stories of the prophets and all. She is repeating all those things. They could not believe that these things happened to their grandma. Now, in the second paragraph, she had always been short and fat and slightly bent. These old people will be bent. They will have a bend. They will have hunchback, isn't it? So why? Because they are very much tired of walking, and their backbone will be slightly bent due to the hard work they had to do. So because of that, the old people will have a hunchback, will have a slightly bent look. Her face was crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. So there were a lot of wrinkles on her face. These old people will have a lot of wrinkles over there. Folding marks will be over their face. If you look at the picture of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, you will see a lot of wrinkles over her face. So, no, we were certain she had always been as we had known her. So she remained the same for a quite long period. Old, so terribly old, that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She was pretty old, but she remained the same old age for 20 years. That means she looked the same old lady as she was 20 years back. Okay, so she maintained the same type of bend, the color, everything, the style, everything was same for last 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. So she was a pretty lady. She was a very beautiful lady. She hobbled about the house in spotless white, with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop, and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Rosary means a particular kind of chain in which there will be a lot of small beads, which could be used for reciting. Even Christians, Hindu, Muslim people, all these people, religious people, will use this kind of rosary in order to recite prayers. So in one hand she had a rosary. So in the previous picture, I think you have seen that rosary. I will post some photos. Okay, so she had a beautiful rosary in her one hand, and one hand was resting over her waist, because the old people will move like that. No, they will have difficulty for walking, and they will be like that. Okay, there will be always prayer over their lips and all those things. It. Her silver locks, that means, were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. So her hair, silver colored hair, was scattered over her face. These old people will have this silver colored, white colored hair. Those were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered means wrinkled, with crisscross wrinkles. Now we have already seen over her face, and her lips constantly moved in an inaudible prayer. So always her lips were moving. That means she was reciting some prayers. So it was inaudible, means it was unable to hear. Yes, she was beautiful. She was a pretty lady, very beautiful. She was like the landscape in the mountains. So here Kushwanth Singh is comparing, simile is used, like is there, no? So she was like the landscape in the mountains. So the landscape in the mountains will look very, very, very nice. It is a pleasing sight to our eyes. So in the same way, this old lady was like mountains in the landscape. Very nice. It was a pleasure to meet her, pleasure to see her, a very beautiful old lady. And an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. So her face was very calm, very serene, very quiet, and she was breathing peace. If you look at the face of that particular grandma, you will see a kind of serenity, calmness, and quietness and peace, and a kind of contentment, a joyful face. She had a joyful face. Some of the old people, if they are very much contented, very, very happy, and it will add beauty to their existing charmness. Okay, so she was very calm, very quiet, prayerful lady, very beautiful. Okay, though she was very old, she was a beautiful grandmother. Okay, you may also have such beautiful grandmothers, isn't it? So thus we conclude today's lesson. Tomorrow onwards, in the next class I will explain from 3 onwards, from the 3rd paragraph onwards. So my dear children, please write down the question answers. Try to read the lesson 2-3 times. At least you read both these paragraphs 3-4 times. Okay. We will discuss the latter in the next class.